underground, brother.
I know that I post quite a bit. I'm just bored at work, and I occupy myself by telling y'all my unexplainable creepy-ass experiences. This experience is rather short, but it's another one at the local port. For more context on the setting, take a read of my other security night shift experiences on my profile or on this subreddit, if you can find them. Well, long story short. For those of you who don't know, I used to work night shifts as a security guard at the local port. It was haunted. Believe me. Anyway, every night, we had to go do our patrol rounds around the whole perimeter and check every single office. The rounds usually lasted about 1 hour to 1 hour and 30 minutes. The place was huge, 2-mile radius, and even with 2 of us on the rounds, it would still take us a while. If you all remember my co-worker, Mike, the guy that was with me on my other experiences, had called in sick that night. So, I went on my patrol rounds alone. As for the lieutenant, he stayed at the front gate post, watching his and cameras. Around 2 a.m., I had finished the outdoor round in the truck. Sometimes we used a 4-wheeler or a bike. So, after finishing the outside round, I would have to go inside of every single building and check the offices to make sure no office employees stayed overnight and in case there's an intruder or trespasser on the property. The buildings were really dark inside. The maintenance man would shut off the breakers in the box right before he'd leave. Unfortunately, security did not have access to those keys. Therefore, I had to use my flashlight to light up the hallways and offices. The offices alone were creepy and haunted enough due to the old age. The fact that I had to walk around those buildings alone in the dark creeped me the fuck out. It's dead quiet in that you could hear my steel toe boots echo through the hallways. The next part is a blur because I began to get chills and hyperventilate. So, as I am walking through the dark office hallways, I began to hear a scratching-like sound on the walls right next to me. I stopped to listen, but the nails stopped as well. I thought it was probably just me. So I continue walking, and I stop dead in my tracks because the scratching sounds began to get louder this time. I knew that it was nothing normal, but rather something evil, demonic toying with me because this isn't the first time something this freaky happens to me there, and I had just came out of those offices. There wasn't anyone in there. At this point, my heart is racing, and I'm right in the middle of the building with the nearest exit being the other side of the building. Next, I hear pounding on the wall and I begin to sprint out on adrenaline. The pounding followed me to the end of the hallway. This put me on edge for the rest of the night. When I entered another hallway, it stopped. It sounded huge and I tried calling the lieutenant to report it, but the phone signal in the offices was complete trash. I didn't even bother to finish the round because I was almost going to pass out of anxiety. I went back to front gate and wrote a report on it. I didn't even write a report on my other experiences, but I was getting fed up with it. So for the first time in my life, I wrote a report on the paranormal. No, I don't believe it was something logical because those punches were unbelievably loud. Like whatever was banging on the wall was not human. I mean, I couldn't even stomp that loud if I tried. Side note, I'm a big dude, I weight 227 pounds, I couldn't even stomp that loud. I tried it the next day that Mike went with me. I train in powerlifting, and there's only one person in the world who's ever truly scared me. I am not afraid of other people, but this paranormal, demonic stuff scares the absolute shit out of me. This will most likely be a series, since all of my friends' weird encounters and paranormal activity couldn't fit in one post. Starting with the dreams, sleep paralysis, and sleepwalking. Later on we will delve into her experiences and her haunted house. I'm going to be doing a lot of different interviews, but over time I will get all the stories up here. Since she doesn't want me to use her real name on the internet, her pen name will be MK. I will also be changing some other minor details in order not to disclose any information. A lot of the descriptions in the story are direct quotes from her. Thank you. My friend MK has been a magnet for the abnormal her entire life. When she was little she would sleepwalk and have sleep paralysis, and was witnessing all sorts of absolutely horrible things. Now, I know that it's not uncommon for bad things to happen in stages of sleep paralysis and other things, but the evidence that has convinced both me and MK that this was something more unnatural, was the fact that she was so ridiculously young when they happened, and had not been introduced to any sort of gore or violence in her life. She lives in an extremely Catholic family that wouldn't introduce her to violence until she was about 13. At which point she promptly got addicted to zombie movies, and has absolutely no fear reflex. These first two dreams happened when she was anywhere from 2 to 4 years old, and both happened while she was living in a trailer park. The Burning Man. Through the entire experience, MK's eyes were open and she was physically moving through her trailer. She was laying on her bed at night when she says she smelled smoke. She got out of bed and went to open her door. Immediately she was engulfed in clouds of suffocating gray. She then walks down the hall and into the living room, and absolutely everything is on fire. The hallucinations were so vivid that she could physically hear the china in the cabinet cracking from the heat, and it was hard to breathe through the smoke. Out of nowhere in the middle of the room all of her muscles suddenly stiffened, and she was trapped in her own body. A man then walks out from the fire. His eyes are completely black and he is burning. She describes that he has a look of fear and anger and pain on his face. She could see his hair had burned from his scalp and saw ash falling from his head. His skin was bubbling and blistering as he turns to charcoal right in front of her eyes. He stood only about 5 feet away from MK. She says the man had a very distinct face, and says that even 20 years from now she will remember his face. The man's jaw falls from his skull, and hits the floor, melting. He begins to scream. It was an absolutely deafening sound, inhumanly loud. A scream of horror, anger and pain and fear. The screeching continued for what seemed like forever. Then MK felt like she was falling. She fell and then the man's screaming cut off, only to be replaced by her own. Her father's face appeared right in front of her. She has been screaming the entire time and had woken up her parents. After that experience they took her to her pediatrician, but he dismissed it as extreme sleepwalking or something like that. When she was older, her parents had told her that her pupils had expanded so much that there was no color left in her irises. She remembers every detail even to this day. And this was only the first of many encounters, paranormal and otherwise. Whispering Heads. In this story, she was living in the same trailer park and was about a year older. MK was sleeping on her bed when she felt cold water drip onto her face and wake her up. It was icy cold and had gotten into her mouth. She sat up and saw all of the floor of her room was covered in a sparkling mist that would swirl around her feet when she walked. The door to her room was open and she walked out to the hallway which was covered in black mold. M.K's trailer seemed to be tilted, and down the hallway black water was congregating in the tilted corner. MK describes the scene as being cold and wet, with a weird feeling and things dripping from the ceiling. She finally looked up and saw hundreds of heads hanging from the roof that were entwined with wire. Their faces were frozen in agony and blood was dripping from your eyes, mouth, ears and everywhere else. The moment she peered upward all of the heads suddenly turned toward her and started babbling in languages she didn't recognize. She couldn't make sense of what was happening and was terrified as blood dripped on her face. The voices rose in volume until her ears rang. But then once again her house was leveled out and water free. Her mother and father were with her again and were holding her shaking body, saying that a plane or helicopter had flown over and had made a loud noise. To this day she is somewhat unsettled by loud noises. Thank you for reading these first stories. In case any of you are worried, MK almost never sleepwalks anymore, nor does she have sleep paralysis. But things got worse before they get better. Not only with her own head but with encountering some spirits in the house that her family would later buy. Thank you for reading. Thank you for watching my video. I would really appreciate it if you would leave any feedback on how I can improve my videos. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss any of these spooky stories.